Welcome to the latest Medcan Presents webinar. That's the webinar series that we do every other Tuesday. It's April 20th, 2021, and this is the benefits of plant-based eating for everyone with Leslie Beck, the director of Medcan Food and Nutrition. Thanks to everyone who has already responded to the poll. So I'll just draw your attention to the poll, which will be ongoing through this start, and we'll share results on that in a minute. Also, I'll note that we'll take questions at the end of this. So this is a webinar. I'm really excited about this, and I'm really, I know Leslie is too. Leslie, how are you today?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm personally interested in this one. So I'm going to be taking notes, and I know a lot of people will as well. So we'll be taking questions at the end. So you can ask questions through the question function or through the chat function. We'll be triaging those throughout. And why don't I stop the poll? Well, yeah, 75% of people have voted. So end poll and share results. Leslie, can you see those results?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time to fill that out. So it looks like, you know, most of you just are interested learning about plant-based diets, 50% of you. The next 28% of you, you know, you're not planning to become a vegetarian or a vegan, but you do want to add more plant-based meals to your diet, which is what I hear from many of our clients. And then some of you are looking to fully transition towards a fully plant-based diet. So that's good. That's great. Thank you.
So why don't we move into your presentation?
Yep,
I know we have a lot of material to get through, so we can just kind of get into that and then go from there.
Okay, so I'm just going to open up my screen to share with everyone. Is that working? Everybody can see? Great. So thank you, Chris. Hello to everyone. Thank you very much to join me today to learn about plant-based diets. And there certainly is no question plant-based diets are very popular. Last year alone, the sales of plant-based meats boomed in Canada and around the world as well. You know, and with consumer concerns over health, the environment, animal welfare, there's no reason to expect that this demand is going to slow down. And according to the International Food Information Council's 2020 year-end survey, plant-based topped the list of diets that consumers had heard the most about last year. So that was even over above ketogenic, intermittent fasting, Mediterranean diets. So let's get started. This is what I want to talk to you about over the next 20 to 25 minutes. I first of all want to define what is a plant-based diet, because there are some misconceptions out there. What are the benefits? Why should you add more plants to your diet? And if many of you, 50% of you here today, you know, you're just wanting to add more plant-based, how do you go about it? How do you get started? I want to cover off I'll do this fairly quickly, but you know, some people are concerned, oh, if I eat plant-based meals or I'm more of a plant-based diet, I'm not going to get everything I need. What about my protein, my B12? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And some people think that, you know, plant-based is boring. It doesn't have a lot of flavor. So I'm going to provide you with some amazing resources to go to for recipes. As well, I'm just going to share with you a few things that I always have in my pantry or my fridge that really add flavor to meals, plant-based or not. And then, of course, we'll take questions as well. Okay, yes. Next poll, I just want you to ask, I really want to understand your number one motivation for adding more plant-based meals to your diet. Do you want to do it to be healthy? Is your first concern to do your part to protect the environment? Do you want to be kinder to animals? Are all of those reasons equally important, or none of the above? Perhaps you're interested for another reason. Maybe you have a son or a daughter who's become a vegetarian and you want the family to participate in those kind of meals as well. So just take a minute to get those answers from you. Healthy. Yeah. All right. Very good. Equally, all of those reasons are important. That's excellent. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So do I close that, Chris? I guess I close that. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. So let's first talk about, oh, here we go again. Excellent. Okay. What is a plant-based diet? And first of all, a hint, you don't have to follow a vegan diet to have a plant-based diet. So plant-based eating really means choosing proportionately more of your foods from plants than animals. So proportionately more fruits, vegetables, beans and lentils, whole grains, nuts and seeds. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that you will never eat dairy or never eat meat. And as you'll see from this slide, plant-based diets really can vary greatly depending on the extent to which a person includes animal foods. So a Mediterranean diet, which we're all probably very familiar with, is considered a plant-based or plant-forward diet because it includes lots of plant foods every day, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, beans, that type of thing. And it includes only a moderate amount of animal foods, be it, poultry or fish or perhaps yogurt. And red meat is really limited to small portions at most 3 times a week. A vegetarian diet excludes meat, poultry, and fish, but it can include dairy and eggs. This particular type of vegetarian diet is called a lacto-ovo-vegetarian diet. Vegan diets, as we know, avoid all animal foods, including dairy and eggs. Another term you may have heard out there is a whole foods plant-based diet. This is a 100% plant-based diet that emphasizes whole and minimally processed foods. So for example, Beyond Meat burgers are not going to be regular fare in this type of plan. And you may have heard of Forks Over Knives. I've got this on a slide at the end as a good resource for you. Forks Over Knives, if you've seen the documentary, really describes how a whole foods plant-based diet can really help people with coronary heart disease. A pesco vegetarian diet is one that includes fish and seafood. A semi-vegetarian or a flexitarian diet is a plant-based diet that occasionally includes meat. So you'll see from the, there are 3 different bowls or salads. The first one is fully plant-based. The second one might be with eggs, something a lacto-ovo-vegetarian might eat. And the third one might be sort of a pesco-vegetarian, sort of the poke bowl with salmon. All of those are examples of plant-based meals, plant-forward meals. Okay, so this slide has a lot of words on it, but most people you ask would not consider themselves a vegetarian or a vegan, but many would very likely say that they were willing to eat more plant-based meals, and many would also likely say they're very willing to eat less red meat for personal health reasons, planetary health, and animal welfare. And according to research, and you've proven this in the poll, health is the top motivator for eating plant-based foods. I mean, we've known from the research that diets heavy in red meat are associated with a greater risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer. And at the same time, plant-based diets are linked to better health, including a lower risk of heart disease, obesity, certain cancers, depression, Alzheimer's disease as well. And of course, there are environmental reasons too. You may have read that food production is among the leading sources of greenhouse gas emissions that cause global warming. And food production is also a significant contributor to biodiversity loss, deforestation, water use, land use. But the production of livestock, though, particularly beef cattle, generates the highest level of greenhouse gas emissions, whereas the production of fruits and vegetables generates the lowest levels. So shifting to a plant-based diet is one way to help reduce global warming and the other environmental impacts of a meat-centered diet. And then, of course, there's animal welfare considerations as well, and which are really important reasons for some people to really reduce or eliminate red meat from their diet. And intensive livestock organizations really strive to maximum output by minimizing costs. So that means that animals can live in very cramped, crowded spaces, causing them stress. And, I'll never forget something that Michael Pollan said in one of his New York Times blogs, years ago, but he wrote, "To peer over the increasingly high walls of our industrial animal agriculture is to not only lose your appetite, but to feel revulsion and shame." So for some people, adopting a plant-based diet is just a vote against animal cruelty. All right, Let's now talk about some of the ingredients in a plant-based diet. We'll start with plant proteins because that's where I think most people go to immediately. It's, plant versus animal protein. So these are some of the proteins that you will be using in your diet in place of animal protein sometimes. So pulses, and by that we mean beans and lentils. You might buy them canned. Absolutely fine. Drain them and rinse them, ready to use. You might soak them overnight. You might use your Instapot to cook them. So whatever works for you. Soy foods made from soybeans, maybe soybeans themselves, edamame, tofu, tempeh are also really good sources of plant protein. I always have a bag of shelled edamame in my freezer. It's just so easy to throw into a salad or soups. Nuts and seeds add protein to meals as well. Why not make a stir fry and throw cashews in instead of, say, meat? But it's not only beans and lentils and tofu that supply protein. We often forget about whole grains. And 1 cup of cooked farro, which is delicious, by the way, has 14 grams of protein. That's as much protein as in 2 large eggs. Quinoa has 8 grams of protein per cup, but fricassee, spelt berries, wheat berries, whole grain pastas are other sources of protein. You'll get some protein from plant milks or plant-based beverages, but not all of them. So soy milk and pea milk both have 8 grams of protein. That's the same amount that's found in 1 cup of cow's milk. And to Canada anyway, Silk's almond plus cashew milk, it's relatively new on the market. It's fortified with pea protein, so it also has 8 grams of protein per 1 cup serving. Almond milk, cashew milk, coconut milk, they're very low in protein. Oat milk is low in protein, maybe 1 to 2 grams per cup. That doesn't mean, though, you can't get protein elsewhere if you prefer those products. Plant meats, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Plant, burgers, patties, sausages, etc., are also a way to add protein. And let's not forget about vegetables. Vegetables also, half a cup have about 2 grams of protein. We often think about the protein, but there's more to plant-based diets than that. So we already talked about whole grains as a source of protein, but they also, of course, supply lots of fiber, antioxidants, phytochemicals, vitamins, and minerals. We talked about nuts and seeds. As part of a protein, but healthy plant-based fats are also a key ingredient in a plant-based diet. So nuts and seeds, all of them, as well as chia, flax, and hemp seeds. These foods provide healthy, anti-inflammatory, unsaturated fats. They supply vitamin E, which is really important for brain health. It protects your brain cell membranes. Magnesium, which is associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, as well as fiber. We talked about protein. Nuts and seed butters are among them, avocado, cooking oils. And for those of you who eat oily fish like salmon or trout, that's another way to get not only protein, but omega-3 fats called DHA and EPA in your diet as well. So those are the ingredients we're talking about. We're not just talking about protein. All right. So what are some simple ways you can start adding more plant-based meals to your current diet? And it doesn't mean you're going to become a vegetarian. So the first thing I do recommend as a starting point is to set a target. I advise all of my clients, whether or not they're moving towards a plant-based diet, to really start by including at least 4 plant-based meals in their diet every week. And you know what? You might already be doing that. You might already be eating a few. I mean, if you have whole grain toast with, almond butter and a bowl of berries for breakfast, that's a plant-based meal. It might be lentil soup and a side salad for lunch, or it might be bean burritos for dinner. But so think about that. There's lots of ways you can do that. And if you already are doing this, perhaps your goal is to perhaps eat 1 plant-based or maybe 2 plant-based meals a day. Again, you might have that oatmeal and berries for breakfast. You might have a big salad with chickpeas in it for lunch. And maybe at dinner, you have, your a small portion of animal protein on your plate. So there are different ways to do this. If you feel that your meals, your lunches, your dinner, they always are a source of, animal protein, your chicken, fish, meat really make up the balance of most of your meals, consider downsizing its importance. So what you might do instead is aim for 3/4 of your plate to be filled with plant foods, whether that's beans and lentils, whole grains, vegetables, etc. So to do that, you're going to have to add more plant foods to the mix. That might mean you're going to have to put some fruit in at breakfast if you're not used to having fruit at breakfast. You might need to ensure that every lunch or dinner has either whole grains or a lot more vegetables than you're used to eating. But bottom line, increasing the proportion of plants at your meals, you're going to decrease the proportion of animal protein. And some people start by, just eliminating animal proteins that they seldom eat, and for a lot of people that is red meat, just whether that's because of the health reasons, or I find as people get older, many people complain they don't digest it as well. It doesn't feel good, as they don't feel as well when they're eating it. So that's another option as well. Number 2 is consider modifying your favorite meals, to make your favorite meals 100% plant-based. So, vegetarian chili, that's easy to see. But instead of turkey tacos, you might make black bean or pinto bean tacos. Instead of serving, pasta with a tomato meat sauce, why not try a marinara sauce that's packed with vegetables, mushrooms, red peppers, carrots, spinach. You'll find it equally, if not more satisfying than one that's got ground meat in it and very few vegetables. Think about, with all of these meals, you're getting a lot more fiber, which is filling and satiating. And again, the next time you're thinking about making a turkey or beef chili, instead of putting in the meat, put an extra couple of cans of beans in. Tofu Scramble is another way, if you're used to having scrambled eggs, try that. There's some great recipes out there. They've got different seasonings in them. That's great as well. And I mentioned earlier, throwing cashews into a stir fry. So think about, those are only a few ideas. I'm sure you have some of the meals that you serve regularly at home that you could try making plant-based instead of meat. Another really easy way to get more plant-based foods in your diet is to consider your snacks. And making your snacks 100% plant-based is another step you can take. And you may already be doing this often as well. So, vegetables and hummus or guacamole, fruit and nuts, a fruit smoothie made with soy or pea milk. Of course, I'm looking for a little bit of protein there. You don't necessarily have to use those two options, or buying a latte made from soy milk. You might slice up an apple and have it with some almond butter or pumpkin seed butter or whole grain crackers. And if you're into energy bars, you can look for plant-based types, whether that's Larabar protein, Vega protein snack bar, I believe it's called. So these are just some ways, but that's an easy goal I'm going to make my snacks plant-based, and, take away the cheese or the meat, whatever what you're eating. Talked about this a little bit, but you also might consider looking beyond dairy. You might consider replacing some of the dairy with plant-based products. So we talked a little bit about the plant-based beverages already, the plant-based milks. We've talked about protein. You can get protein elsewhere in your diet. But if you're wanting to have the equivalent amount of protein, read labels, look for something with around 8 grams of protein. But the other consideration here is fortification. So many plant-based beverages out there are fortified with calcium, B12, and zinc. So that means when you're getting 1 cup of a fortified almond milk, you're getting along with that a good 300 milligrams of calcium, which is the same amount that's found in 1 cup of cow's milk. And that is important for some people to help them meet their daily calcium requirements. So you have to read labels. You'll see calcium will be on the ingredient list, but you'll also look at the daily value for calcium, and it should say 25 to 30% daily value. There's non-dairy yogurts out of there made with almond or coconut. They tend to be lower in protein. Certainly, they're much lower than Greek yogurt. Non-dairy cheeses that you might use in places where you use some cheese. That's another way. A little bit about meat substitutes now. So I think you can use them. These are if you're already following a plant-based diet. These can be occasional substitutes for whole plant foods like beans and lentils, or tofu, that kind of thing. Or, if you want to cut down on your red meat, you might decide, I'm going to try one of these products instead of having a beef burger, let's say, or perhaps even a turkey burger. These products are made from some of them are made from soy protein, other pea protein. Some have beans and vegetables and grains in them. They do usually have added vegetable oil. They have salt for sure, binders. They are processed foods. So, I certainly don't recommend including them in your diet on a regular basis. I am more absolutely in favor of whole foods versus highly processed foods, but they're convenient and they're a way for some people to cut back their intake of red meat. And of course, you can find lots of recipes. You might even consider making your own, veggie burgers or pea protein burgers or black bean burgers and freezing them for future use. Okay. And I think another strategy is to rethink, your takeout or just consider, what your Uber Eats order is, or if you, depending on where you live, if you're eating out in restaurants now. I certainly am not here in Toronto. We're not allowed to yet. It's not safe to do so, but think about where you're ordering your food from and continue plant-based eating when you're dining out. And certainly if you're choosing many ethnic options, whether it's Middle Eastern, Mexican, Thai, Japanese, Indian, Italian, those are great choices for many different plant-based meals. And there's something really for the whole family will be able to enjoy. So think about what you're eating when you're dining out as well. Okay. I want to cover this because this is a question I often get. And is it possible to get all of your daily nutrients? Let's say, even if you were going to eat a 100% plant-based diet, almost from foods alone, I would say almost, but let's cover a few things that come to mind. Many people are afraid they're not going to get enough protein from a plant-based diet, but absolutely it's possible. How much protein you need depends on your body weight. It depends on exercise. If you're exercising, you need more, particularly so if you're strength training. It depends on your age. Adults 60 and older it's recommended you get a little extra protein to slow down age-related muscle loss, and your calorie level. If you're cutting calories in an effort to lose weight, you do need to get a little bit more protein to help you hold on to muscle as you lose body fat. So the key in a plant-based diet or not is to include protein, a good source at every meal. And that's important whether you eat animal protein or not, also just to help for muscle strength and optimal muscle function. So I just wanted to show you here, if you are thinking about replacing, let's say 3 ounces of chicken or fish in a meal, 30 grams, the protein equivalent would be 1 cup of beans, say chickpeas or kidney beans or lentils, or 3/4 of a cup, pardon me, of shelled edamame, or 3/4 of a cup of chopped firm tofu, or it might be a smoothie made with a cup of pea milk, a couple of tablespoons of hemp seeds, and half a scoop of protein powder. So make sure that you're including protein in every meal. One quick little point I'll make here is that some people think, oh, I'm eating a plant-based meal, so I have to combine my proteins carefully to make sure I get all those essential amino acids that your body can't make on its own. But the truth is you don't. Even if you are eating a vegan diet, we know now, as long as you're consuming a variety of proteins over the course of the day, your body will get all those essential amino acids it needs to make proteins in your body. B12 depends on the extent of your plant-based diet. Naturally, it's found only in animal foods, meat, poultry, fish, and dairy. Adults need 2.4 micrograms per day. It's also found in fortified foods. So we mentioned plant-based beverage. If they're fortified, they have 1 microgram per cup. It might be added to certain soy products like soy burgers, etc., but you need to check labels. Another source is fortified nutritional yeast. So nutritional yeast is sold as powder or flakes. It's a great source of B vitamins, especially B12, But when it's fortified with B12, it becomes an excellent source, depending on the brand, anywhere from 2 to 4 micrograms per 1 tablespoon. It has a cheesy flavor if you haven't used this already, and it's really versatile. You can sprinkle this over pasta or popcorn, baked potatoes, scrambled eggs, cooked vegetables, even you can add it to a smoothie. So there's lots of ways you can get B12. What I will say here, if you are following a vegan 100% plant-based diet, you should be getting 250 micrograms of B12 every day from a supplement. That might be a multivitamin that has that amount, a B complex, or a separate B12 supplement. And again, a note to adults over the age of 50, it is recommended that adults over 50 get the majority of their daily B12 from either a supplement like a multivitamin or fortified foods. And that's because, you know, up to 30% of older adults become less efficient at producing stomach acid, which is key to absorbing B12 from animal foods. Iron. So iron, you know, believe it or not, plant-based eaters typically consume as much, if not more iron than meat eaters. And that's because all of those plant-based foods, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, whole grains, many of them are pretty good sources of iron. And plant-based eaters tend to eat more of those foods than meat eaters. The problem, though, is that the iron in plant foods, and we call that non-heme iron, is not nearly as well absorbed as the iron in animal foods, which is called heme iron. And that's why vegans, the daily requirement for iron is 80% higher. So for example, I've shown you women who are menstruating, if you're a plant-based eater, 34 milligrams of iron you need every day. If you're non-vegetarian, 18 milligrams. So it's a big difference. You can, however, significantly enhance iron absorption in plant-based meals by adding a source of vitamin C. And all it takes is a little bit, 50 milligrams. That might just be half a cup of broccoli, a quarter cup of red pepper, or half a cup of strawberries, say, sliced on your oatmeal. What I do recommend is for growing teenagers, for women who are menstruating, to take a multivitamin and mineral that includes iron in it. Just a quick note about iodine, which is a mineral that's crucial for thyroid function, and people who don't get enough iodine in their diet are at risk for hypothyroidism. Teens and adults need 150 micrograms per day. So it's found mainly dairy, fish, and seafood. It's also found in iodized salt and seaweed. So what my recommendation here is for vegans is to make sure that you're getting iodine from a multivitamin and mineral. So, you know, buy a product that's got your 150 micrograms in it. Omega-3s, we touched upon this a bit, but in order to get what you need from the plant-based omega-3, ALA or alpha linolenic acid, it would require you to include in your diet, easy to do, either a tablespoon of chia seeds or ground flax, or a tablespoon and a half of hemp seeds, or 7 to 10 walnut halves in your diet each day. Either one of those options will supply you with, male or female, a full day's worth. DHA is the omega-3, again, in oily fish. It's the one that gets into your brain. If you eat fish a couple of times a week, you're getting lots. You can also take fish oil supplements. If you prefer to be fully plant-based, there are DHA supplements made from algae. Okay, so finally, I just want to share with you a little bit about flavor and recipes. I'm going to skip over this because I want to take some time for questions. These are some of the plant-based meals, or not, don't have to be flavorless, and many of them have amazing flavor. These are just some of the ingredients I always have in my cupboards, in my fridge, to add flavor to meals. I always have toasted nuts and seeds. I buy the nuts, I toast them, I throw them into salads, grain bowls, pilafs. Toasting nuts and seeds really amps up their flavor. I do the same thing with my shredded unsweetened coconut. I toast the whole thing, and then I keep it, add it to berries and yogurt, smoothies, certain curries. Tahini sauce is amazing. You can drizzle it over bowls, whether it's a bean bowl or a whole grain bowl, roasted vegetables, stir fries. You can use it as a salad dressing. Start cooking using fresh herbs in your foods. Mint and parsley routinely go into my green salads. Cilantro goes into many Mexican inspired dishes, but there's lots you can do with mint and parsley to really add a lot of flavor to bean salads, let's say. And citrus juice, lime juice, lemon juice. Lemon juice is delicious, added to lentil soup at the end of cooking. I squeeze lime juice on bean salads, bean tacos. So there's lots you can do with that as well. And then finally, this is by no means an exclusive list. These are a number of websites you can go to that have many different plant-based recipes. Some of them, I've used some from all of these websites and really enjoyed some of them. The problem is most of them do not have a nutritional breakdown of the recipe. But that's fine. Some of them are great. Cookie and Kate, Oh She Glows, I'm sure many of you are familiar with. You may even have her cookbooks, Minimalist Baker. The Full Helping is something I've come across recently. She's a dietitian out of the States. Some really great recipes. I've got one for tempeh falafel, which was delicious. And then Forks Over Knives, I mentioned it earlier. This is a great resource if you want to learn more about plant-based diets, as well as getting lots of recipes. They have a whole beginner's guide. They have a meal planners. There's a recipe app you can get, and they also have an online cooking course. And again, lots of recipes on the website as well. So I encourage you to go there, experiment with different recipes, just experiment with your own meals to add plant-based, to make them more plant-based, to start this journey to eating more plant-based foods. And with that, I think, Chris, we can open it up to questions.
That's fantastic. Leslie, if you would just unshare your screen. I don't know, okay. Maybe that's the word of 2021, unshare.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. And boy, it spoke to so many issues I think that a lot of people are having. We have lots of questions. Okay. We'll just start off with the first one. Can you talk about the best type of protein powder?
That's a great question. So if you're talking about plant-based protein, if your concern is muscle strength, building muscle, and you're not fully plant-based, whey protein really has the most bioavailable amino acids that your muscles are going to use to repair protein and build protein. If you would like to choose a plant-based protein, pea protein would be first, pea, soy, and then brown rice would be better choices in terms of their ability, muscle repair, muscle synthesis. The one at the very end of the list would be collagen. Collagen is, that collagen protein is not at all very good for muscle health.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay. Leslie, can you speak to a vegan sourced calcium supplement?
Oh, I can't right now off the top of my head. I'm sure there are many out there. Yeah, I will. Can we get that answer back to somebody, a calcium source?
Sure. What we can do, I mean, after every webinar, we put the link to the archive of the webinar out the next day. And so in that, we can feature the
okay.
If you want to look this up, we can feature the answer in the.
That sounds great. I will. I'll totally do that. Okay.
Okay. With an abundance of grains and legumes, is the vegan lifestyle good for diabetes?
Okay. Yeah. And I didn't have time, but this is a great question because, beans, legumes, lentils, grains, of course, they've got carbohydrates, right? And so two things. Carbohydrates turn into blood sugar. So people who have diabetes or pre-diabetes for that matter, need to manage their blood sugar. So, and I will also say that's also a concern for some people who are wanting to lose weight or prevent weight gain when they go to a plant-based diet. I just talked to a client on the phone this morning that she had tried going to a more plant-based diet, not really knowing how to manage her portion. She gained 6 pounds. So I think it's all about portions, depending on what your goal is. And so I'll just give you one example of this because it's very individualized advice, but depending on who you are and what your calorie intake is. But for example, if I'm just in general broad strokes, if I see a female in my office, her goal is to lose some weight and she wants to replace, let's say, her 3 ounces of tuna or chicken at lunch with 1 cup of chickpeas. Know that because beans and lentils have also starch in them besides that protein, then just downsize the starch component of your meals. So if you're having brown rice or sweet potato, you'd have less, maybe half the amount that you normally would. So just watch that. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something you have to consider when you're controlling blood sugar, and weight, is the portion sizes of the beans and the lentils and the grains. But they're nutritious, so you should eat them still.
No, that's, yeah, fantastic. I mean, this next question is something that actually my own family struggles with as well. So in families with kids, if you're trying for plant-based, but then the kids are not, so the question is, how do you encourage kids to eat plant-based? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, you will find some kid-friendly recipes on some of those different sites that you can try. So yeah, I know a lot of my even teenagers kind of sometimes turn their nose up to sort of beans and lentils or vegetarian chili. So I think perhaps depending on the age of the child, I've got clients who they will bake sort of tofu bites or tofu strips. They may bread them in sort of a homemade healthy breadcrumb or with flax, that kind of thing, and bake them. And then the kids can dip that in what they dip them in. And kids do tend to like that. That's one way. I also have a recipe that I've had for years that I routinely give to clients. It's a brown rice and lentil casserole that you can either use as an entree by itself or as a side dish, and kids like it. I think the thing is just trying different things and perhaps not labeling it as here's a vegetarian food or plant-based foods perhaps. But I would search out, there's lots of ideas on websites for kids and picky eaters. And maybe you start with easier meals. Maybe you start with snacks. Maybe you start with breakfast, like smoothies are easy, and, toast with nut butter, as opposed to sort of the main meal.
Yeah. And I do, so one of our children was for a time only eating French fries, chicken McNuggets, and like basically white food. And we essentially, I essentially gave up on it because it was harming my relationship with him. And so this is kind of 3 or 4 years later. He's a teenager, and he's now coming to a more adventurous diet. And so I don't know. So sometimes you just have to give up and let time take its course.
Yeah,
because they will come around, I think. Yeah. I am clearly not me, but I am a 70-year-old female who is B12 deficient. I have not been given a definitive daily intake value. Are you able to advise me on this issue?
Okay. So what was the age, did you say?
70.
70. Okay. And if you have had a blood test that indicates you have a B12 deficiency and your doctor has told you that, then my recommendation is that you take 1,000 micrograms of a separate B12 supplement every day. I would do that for 3 months, and then I would book a repeat blood test with your family doctor to see where your level is at. Then what I would also do after that is, to keep your B12 level up, it can require a multivitamin. And as I say, I recommend a multivitamin anyway for adults over 50 to get their B12, but that'll just give you a little bit extra to maintain your higher stores. But you need to treat it and replenish your B12. And there are other considerations too when some people need more B12. If people use PPIs, and anti-reflux medications, or that blocks stomach absorption, and you need a lot of that. It's not stomach absorption, stomach acid production, and you need that stomach acid to absorb B12 and other minerals as well. So that's another consideration for taking a multivitamin with extra B12, or people who are taking metformin to control their blood sugar. Metformin long-term use can also interfere with B12 absorption. So, but yeah, 1,000 micrograms per day, 3 months, get your blood tested again by your doctor.
Great. Okay, we'll take 3 more questions because we're over time. But okay, Can you comment on collagen supplements, types, and what they are good for, if anything?
Yeah, so I can't give you a detailed answer to that because I haven't dived into the different types. What I do know is I wrote a column on beauty supplements not too long ago in the Globe and Mail. So from a collagen supplement standpoint, there is some research out there to suggest that collagen can help with skin health. And we know collagen is a part of the skin. As we age, we lose some of that collagen. So there have been a few studies, small, but nevertheless, that have found in older women taking collagen supplements may help reduce fine lines and help skin elasticity. So that's what I have read. I've looked at some of that research. As I mentioned earlier, I would not take collagen as a supplement thinking it's a great way to get extra protein to help you, recover your muscles from a workout or build muscle. That's not why you would take it.
Okay, fantastic. We have a question. I love nuts. I'm already plant-based. Should I be worried about the amount of fat in my diet?
Okay. So, from a calorie perspective, you may be concerned. It depends on your weight. If you are eating nuts on a daily basis, it depends how many you eat, I suppose. So nuts are high in calories because of the amount of healthy fats they have in them. So they're calorie dense. So some people, have to be careful. 1 cup of peanuts, for example, has close to 1,000 calories. But when it comes to health benefits, and almonds have, 1 cup of almonds have about 850 calories, 860. So they add up quickly. So if you need to control your weight and don't want to gain weight, for sure you need to watch. But studies do show all it takes is a small amount of nuts to reap their health benefits. One big review study showed that it was about 20 grams worth of nuts a day, which I think is, it's 15 almonds, it's 13 pecan halves, it's 34 pistachio nuts, if I'm not mistaken. So you don't need to have a lot, but certainly if you're active and burning lots of calories and you're adding them more than once or twice to your diet, that's probably fine.
That's fantastic. Okay, final question. Are all fermented foods good in a plant-based diet? So kefirs, kombucha, there's a lot now.
Yeah. Oh, fermented foods. I just wrote about this week too. Fermented foods are great. Many fermented foods, not all, are a source of probiotics. So that, those good for your gut kind of bacteria. Those would be unpasteurized sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, but kefir, generally the kefir, it's a fermented milk beverage. But there are plant-based versions of it available as well. Tempeh is fermented. Tempeh is not, though, a source of probiotics, but tempeh is a great fermented plant-based protein food to add to your diet. So, and kombucha, of course, is a fermented beverage. So those are healthy foods, good for your gut. I do encourage people to include fermented foods in their diet on a regular basis.
Fantastic. So I actually think this is, so somebody asked, what do you eat in a day? And I think that was after the cutoff. And I actually think that may be a future webinar.
Oh, okay.
Just walking through what Leslie Beck eats in a day.
Yeah.
And you always, so when we're doing podcasts, I always ask you, what did you have for breakfast as a sound check? And you always say yogurt, right? It's basically
berries are a staple, some sort of high fiber, whether it's oats, whether it's seeds, flax seeds, they're always a staple as well. And and I usually I get my hit of protein at breakfast, which is important. I usually do Greek yogurt. It's not always, or I often will do too, overnight soaked oats. And I do my steel cut oats and I soak them in kefir. And it's amazing. 1 cup of oats, 1 cup of kefir, throw it in the bowl overnight with your lid. I mix in some ground flaxseed. It's at least 4 breakfasts. I spoon it in my bowl, put my berries, my seeds on the top. That's a great breakfast as well. But
that's amazing. Actually, I've never heard of using kefir for that. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. You can, I love it. And so full disclosure, which I probably should have said at the beginning of the webinar, I am not 100% plant-based, not vegan. I have been. Actually, I wrote my plant-based power diet is a fully plant-based diet. And I did try the vegan diet for a number of years, but I'm definitely plant forward, but I'm not 100% plant-based.
I am going to, okay, to wrap this up, I am going to share my screen. This is the Medcan website, how to access the archives of these webinars. So this is medcan.com. Listen, watch, and learn from Medcan experts. You click on podcasts and webinars. We are going to go, and then the previous webinars are over on the right-hand side of your screen. That will take you to, so for example, a variance of concern. This will take you to our YouTube page, and that is Dr. Aisha Khatib's one. And then I am going to move over to what we have coming up. So next, Medcan presents future webinars, the Workspace workout. This is designed to be between video calls, and it's do it in your workspace wherever you happen to be. It's a quick workout that Medcan Director of Fitness Steven Saltzman and Fitness Manager Anna Topali are going to walk people through. And it's designed for working people who are, you know, the Zoom call, the video call warriors who are just back to back to back. This is what you do to kind of get the blood flowing maybe between calls. I think we can all speak to that. Previous, you know, great podcast resource is Why Exercise Won't Help Weight Loss with Herman Poncer. So that's based on the book Burn, Duke University Metabolism Pioneer. Herman Poncer argues weight loss is less about exercise and more about the calories you consume. So thanks everyone. Leslie, that was just a wonderful webinar. Thank you so much.